各位，香港地产大亨谈世界秩序，你们听过吗？一个常年活跃于中美智库、敢讲实话的香港企业家陈启宗，他不是学者，但是说起地缘政治，却比许多外交官还要冷静精准。这一次他在以色列发表演讲，用一场不到20分钟的谈话，把中美关系、中东能源和未来世界格局串成了一个完整的大棋盘。中美关系不会失控，在一片悲观声音中，他是极少数仍保持乐观的人。理由非常简单，如果离婚需要两方同意，而中国不想离婚，那中国肯定不会主动与美国决裂，因为双方的利益纠缠得太深，贸易战没有赢家，科技脱钩代价也太高了。美国短期政治疯狂，每任总统都在选前骂中国，而上台后又非常的温和。他甚至调侃到自己和特朗普都是做房地产的，但不同的是，他赚了钱，而特朗普欠了债。一句话全场大笑，却暗藏锋芒。美国对华的姿态更多是政治的戏剧，而非战略共识。30年前，中国身高1.6米，美国是2.2米，而20年前，中国长到1.8米，10年前是2米，如今中国至少2.1米。如果再打你疼他也疼，这就是今天的现实。力量已经趋于平衡，为什么中国总是被认为支持伊朗呢？他的解释非常现实。能源的安全，中国有20%的能源依赖进口，其中60%来自中东。所以北京在这个地区的政策从来不是意识形态，而是稳定和供应。俄罗斯不是稳定的伙伴，而伊朗地理上靠近巴基斯坦和中国，是可控的能源通道。中国并不想成为以色列的敌人，但也不会无条件的站队。在联合国中投票支持以色列是非常难的，但是让中国保持中立完全可行。今天世界罕见地回到了东西并强的时代，上一次是2000年前的汉朝和罗马帝国，那时候两方隔着丝绸之路，互不相扰，世界和平共存着。后来西方崛起，东方衰落，直到中国复兴，历史再次走到了平衡点。未来几十年，人类的命运取决于一件事，那就是中美能否学会共处。否则不是冷战重演，那就是所有人都要付出代价。而作为香港人的他，希望世界继续保持和平稳定，那是符合每一个人的利益。一句温和的结尾，却是整场最深的警告。让我们看一下视频。
The world order that China sees it. In particular, I want to address two issues. The first one is China-US relations. The second one is China's position vis-a-vis this part of the world. I don't know if Graham Allison is here. Graham, are you here? Not yet. Okay. Graham was my guest in Hong Kong for 3 days a couple of weeks ago. And I, for one, am very sanguine about US-China relations. I know that it has turned very bad. I've been watching it for the last 40 years and intimately for the last 30. I have seen all the ups and downs. I know all the arguments that Graham makes. But let me tell you, my conclusion is that US-China relations will not get out of hand. There's a bad reason and there's a good reason. I'll give you the bad one first. Because I fear that trouble in this part of the world will blow up way before US-China get into trouble. But there are some also good reasons why I believe that China-US relations will not get out of hand. If you need divorce, you usually need two parties. If one party doesn't want a divorce, the chance of having a divorce is much lower. China does not want a divorce. United States, I don't think that at heart want a divorce either. But you can never predict what happened because of domestic politics, by the way, what you call democracy. Crazy things do happen in the short term. And because of that, for example, all the presidents almost in the last 5 or 6 of them always bashed China during the campaigning for the White House. Once they become the president, they all mellow down. Well, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not like anyone we have seen. But that said, Donald Trump understands one thing. He and I are in the same business. The difference is I make a lot of money. And I have zero debt. As real estate developers, he understands something. And I'm afraid I understand a little also. And that is pain. He almost went bankrupt 4 or 5 times. He understands pain. And when China was nobody 30 years ago, 40 years ago, is one thing. But today, China is no longer nobody. Allow me to put it in very pictorial terms. I'm a short guy. I'm 5'3", 1'6". The United States is 7'2". And I'm a 5'3". China 30 years ago was my height. One slap, out he goes. 1996, 2 aircraft carriers of the United States parked outside of Taiwan is nothing whatsoever that the Chinese could do. That's why they have to build their army and navy. And 20 years ago, China was what? 6 foot? So America is still 7'2". You have to punch him. He's out. 10 years ago, China was what? 6'6". You really have to punch it a few times before you can knock him down. But today, I suspect China is maybe 7 foot. America is still 7'2". And China is growing, by the way, although they may not overtake the United States. But would a 7'2" pick on a 7 foot? I suspect not. If you try, he will suffer, and you will suffer. So, take a look at the trade problem today. Whenever there's a trade war, nobody wins, especially when it's between the 2 biggest trade partners in the world. So, both will lose. But let's face it, China has there's a lot of room to move in the tariff side of things. And the non-tariff side of things, is all kinds of things can be negotiated. And God knows, people like me will never know. Maybe Amos will know. I would never know what are the back channel deals between Washington, D.C. and Beijing. So who wins, who loses, who knows? But on the surface, let me tell you who will win. The United States will win a little bit more. Donald Trump will declare victory, and we'll call it a day. The 2 countries in so many areas, and trade is just one among many, that they need each other. They are now tied at the hip, whether you like it or not. And as a result, I see that trade will certainly not develop into something more serious than what it appears to be. So I think that U.S.-China relations overall is going to be fine. I'm not overly worried about it. I think that China is extraordinarily rational about it. And there's a lot of room for negotiation. And China will be very accommodating, not wanting a divorce. And if neither do I think the United States, but they will talk tough, but it's okay. We understand Trump a little. And let him be. He is the president of the United States, and you have to respect him as such. And so I don't think that U.S.-China relationship will get too out of hand. You have a weather problem, you have an immigration problem, you have a financial stability problem, you have an environmental problem, you have a drug trafficking problem. You have so many problems in the world that without the United States and China working together, there'll be no solutions. And for that reason, I believe that U.S.-China relationship will not get overly bad. It will be rough, no question about it. It has been rough in the last 30, 40 years. But I think it will be okay. So let me then finally come to China's position vis-a-vis this part of the world. I've been coming here a lot. I come here 1, 2, 3 times a year. This is my 3rd trip this year, and I'll be back here next month to speak at a university. And China, vis-a-vis this part of the world, a lot of people ask me this question. Why does China always vote with Iran? the best you can hope for is for China to abstain. And they did, at least once, I think, if I remember correctly. But why do they always stand on the side of Iran? Can I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, put yourself for a second away from your position as the state of Israel or as citizen of the state of Israel and put yourself in the position of China. You will never understand the other guy unless you are able to mentally put yourself in his or her position. China, the number one issue for China is energy security. And when something like close to 20% of energy needs of China is now imported, and 60% of that 20% come from this part of the world. When that is the case, your politics is seriously affected by that. And Iran, as we all know, Russia is not a dependable partner in many, many ways, in particular in energy. Talk to my Ukrainian friends, they will tell you. And so, sure, they strike a deal when the West gave Russia a hard time. So China happily say, great, you have a problem with them? I'm here to buy gas from oil and gas from Russia. They strike a deal that for the previous 10 years, they never got the deal. Suddenly, they got it. So Iran is a place that is a steady source of energy that is physically close. Ship it across into Pakistan, you can go straight up, and because Pakistan and China abut each other. And so, of course, they would always have to be on that side. But that said, and of course also in the side of the Arabs, but that said, neither does China want to be your enemy for two reasons, a big reason and a small reason. The big reason is they don't want to offend the United States. You're America's best friend. America is your best friend and will continue to be so for a long, long time, I hope. From time to time, the United States does not want to be friends with China, but that is a periodic thing that may prove to be short-lived. And so that's a bigger reason. The smaller reason is China is enamored by your country mainly because of your technology. And that's why, at the invitation of your foreign ministry, by the way, the gentleman who came to talk to me about building economic relationship between China and Israel 8 years ago, his daughter graduated from IDC, and she's the first. The father is the first person who told me about IDC and the founder who was sitting in the front row. Anyway, so China will always, the best thing you can hope for China, as far as Israel is concerned, is for China to stay out of it. And China wants to stay out of it. China does not want to be dragged into this game. It is not China's game. As long as they get energy security, that's fine. So I think that if you were to try to gain China as a friend to vote for you in the United Nations, that may be tough. But if you want China, neutralize China as not your enemy, in my opinion, that is certainly doable. Because of time, we started late, but anyway, let me conclude. The world has never seen a time like today, in this sense, where the East and the West are both strong. The last time in history when the East and the West were both strong, to my reading of history, was 2,000 years ago. You have the Roman Empire in the West, expanding in those days, and you have the Han Dynasty in China, very strong. And because of technology or the lack thereof, there's only very little interaction between the two, except the Silk Road beginning to form at that time. And so the world was peaceful. Thereafter, the West began to wane. Rome was twice sacked by the barbarians, the Germanic race, the Franks. And then the West basically went down and down into the Dark Ages that lasted anywhere from 500 to 1,000 years. During that period of time, China never stopped progressing until 200 to 300 years ago, as I mentioned earlier. There's a reversal. The West went up because of Renaissance, because of industrialization, rationalization, and the shameful colonialism. Asia led by China, had a wane, mainly because of internal corruption and so forth. So the world never seen a time when the East and the West are both strong. Now, first, in the 60s, the rise of Japan. In the 70s and 80s, the rise of the four little tigers, of which Daniel Arbour is an expert on that, Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore. But all that put together was not enough to move the dial, to tip the balance of the global economic and hence political power until the rise of China in the last 30, 40 years. So today, we are facing a world where East and West are equally strong. How do we live together is the issue that faces all of us. I know you are very much engulfed in your own local, regional, political issues, and I feel for you all. But that said, if one were to take a broader view of the world, how China and the United States will learn to live and work together will determine the shape of the world that you and I and our children and our children's children will live. But I fear that before that developed peacefully too far, this part of the world may be first engulfed in considerable difficulties. So it is to my interest as one who lives in Hong Kong, which is now part of China, that this part of the world will stay as stable, as peaceful as possible. And that's why for the last many years, I've devoted a little bit of my time to hopefully make the world a better place.